when we could be having a way to make sure that our family members get the education they need to get a job and move forward in their lives. Welcome to this edition of Capital Conversations. I'm John Tierney, your congressman, and I'm fortunate to have two really terrific guests on our show today to talk about the economic agenda for women and families. It's a follow-on from last year's forum where Leader Nancy Pelosi came to the district up in Beverly. We had a forum on these issues and had quite a good crowd of people there that really had a high interest in what the conversation was. We outlined how this whole initiative was bolstering America's families, making sure they're provided for more security and more economic security in particular on that. So with me today, I have Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro from the 3rd District of Connecticut. Rosa is co-chair of the Steering and Policy Committee. She's the ranking member on the Appropriations Subcommittee, or I should say the Spending Committee. People get that better, for Labor, Health, Human Services, and Education. Also is on the committee that deals with the spending with respect to agriculture and the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, on that. Oversees all of those things, known for prioritizing economic issues, great policies on families, but also in the larger economic development area. I could go on, but I won't. No. Elected in 1990, she's just a tremendous leader in the House and a great friend. So Rosa, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here.
Delighted to be with you.
And Neera Tanden. Neera is the president of the Center for American Progress and a counselor for the Center for American Progress Fund. She was a policy advisor for President Clinton's campaign, President Clinton in the White House, President Obama's campaign, President Obama in the White House, worked with Secretary Sebelius, advising on health issues. National Journal called her one of the most influential women in Washington. Not too shabby on that. And the unique thing about Neera is that she's from the district. You're actually born and raised in Bedford. Would you spend a moment, Neera, and tell us about your experiences in Bedford that really informed your interest in a lot of the family issues that we're going to be talking about?
Absolutely. Well, you know, I actually grew up in Bedford, the child of a single mom. And one of the things that I attribute to my success so far is just the great public schools of Bedford. And, you know, Bedford is a great community and really cares about education, really cares about its kids. It invests a lot in the public schools. I had some of the greatest mentors in my life as my teachers. And it really was a community that was very welcoming and really believed that anyone could succeed. And I was really fortunate. I feel really fortunate to have grown up there, and that people in the town took kind of community service and public service really seriously, and they take politics really seriously too. And they still do. And you know, it was a great experience, and I learned a lot there.
So your mom's still there?
My mom is still on Springs Road in Bedford.
And you're sort of revisiting, because this will play in the Bedford cable. So you're taking a trip home by this.
I have to tell my mom to watch.
There you go. So, you know, we have in the Democratic caucus a mantra, when women succeed, America succeeds. Right. And I think that's a good starting point for a lot of the conversation on that. But it's not just women, Rosa, is it?
No, it really is about families. First of all, it's a delight to be here with you and with Neera and the great work that she has done. And it's always interesting to hear about people's stories, where you come from, what informs what you do in your professional life. And the same with, you know, with myself and with you, John. It is, and you were one of the first members. And I might say one of the first male members of the House of Representatives to take on an event in Beverly where you talked about this women's and families' economic agenda, and the leader was with you. It is because women are the most challenged economically, we have found. And this is not just made up, it's not contrived. There's the empirical data that, you know, and the science that has looked at that, as well as intuitive. We've talked to women all over the country, and the economic issues are the ones that face them and their families so poignantly. And there are a whole lot of reasons for that. I mean, just to tick off, you know, women came into the workforce in a vengeance. They are now almost a half of the workforce. They're 2/3 of the breadwinners, but they came in low-paying jobs. Right. There is gender discrimination on pay, and they don't have the range of, they're still the primary caregivers in our society. So they got work, and they've got family, and they've got to mix that. And we don't have a lot of the services like child care, like paid sick leave, like paid family and medical leave that help to address those issues. So that's what this agenda is about.
Well, you know, so my prior experience in business was mostly around the law, advising small businesses and families on that. So you get to see it firsthand. I think that's why it becomes so obvious. You say the anecdotal information as much as the data, but both of them are consistent. But you would see families struggling, and you would see the contribution of both parents if there were two families, or a single, you know, parent in that. And to think that was taking pay for issue, Neera, think that somebody in a household would bring home, you know, 77%, as the common numbers say, of what a comparable male would take home and pay, doesn't make sense. I can't see how it's any good for the husband, you know, or the wife on that matter. The bills are at 100% of the bills.
Right, and I think that's why Rosa makes an excellent point about how these are economic issues for families, right? So a woman, as you're saying, a woman takes home less pay. That means more, you know, less income for the family, and it means less food. It means the ability to buy fewer things, which is actually also a bigger problem in our economy. So the point we're making about these issues, whether it's gender discrimination or an increase in the minimum wage workers are disproportionately women. Over 60% are women. They're not teenagers. Most of them are women, many mothers.
And so mostly adults.
And yes,
you know, mostly
35
adults.
years old.
Yeah,
you know, I just had
average.
a conversation with people at the Saugus Chamber of Commerce for breakfast the other morning, and the topic of discussion was the minimum wage. And I was saying that it is a huge percentage of people that are adults. This is not all about teenagers taking an after-school job.
It's close to 90% adults.
And more than half of them are women.
Women.
On that basis, so it matters.
Right.
But I was telling that group, because you know, I'd been a president of a chamber of commerce and involved in everything like that. They're customers. So if they're bringing home 100% instead of 77%, they're going to spend it. We're talking middle-class families, people that are, you know, whether they want to say lower middle class, or what end, they're going to spend it. They've got kids to spend it on. They've got household bills. So it works.
And they're going to spend it in the community. That's a really important point. They're going to spend it in their local community. They're not spending it overseas. They're not moving money around the world. They're spending it on buying things for their families.
So we have a minimum wage bill here on that, and we have a pay equity bill. Both are going. Rosa, you're always a prominent you know, sponsor of both of those, the author on some and the sponsor on others. How are they moving?
Well, the minimum wage bill, which we will, you know, take up today, and you know, not being allowed to take it up under the normal procedures, since we don't have that opportunity being in the minority, that there's going to be filed a petition, discharge petition, so that people will sign up in order to try to get it to be filed. But the point is who can live on $14,500 a year? You can't do that. So it's time for us to raise that minimum wage. And this is about, you know, when you think about it, and I think about the Paycheck Fairness Bill, which I introduced, by the way, in 1997.
Wow.
Right.
1997. So this isn't fly by night. The issue about women and their economic challenges have been around for a while. They have less potential, you know, pension protection, less retirement security, more likely to be in a bankruptcy situation. So that with these things go together. If we want to take a look at how we help workers and their families today, we need to raise the minimum wage. We need to end this gender discrimination on pay, the 77 cents on the dollar. And there's legislation in both areas, as you know, to move. It's harder in the House to pass legislation because our colleagues on the other side of the aisle won't take up the bills. I know the Senate is moving on a paycheck fairness bill.
Stubbornly on that. You know, I don't know who people think they're representing when they take the issue that people should make $7.25 an hour. When I go home, even one occasion when I wasn't home, a local business person stood right up at one of the meetings and said, look, he ran a coffee shop, and he paid his people far more than the minimum wage on that because he had less turnover, less training expenses, less employee theft, better morale, you know, and people were not absent as often, and they were, as you say, customers of his as well as his neighbors on that basis, and that really is the motive out here. These are our neighbors, these are our friends, and who would say to somebody, you have to live on that low amount of dollars? And most of the people that I talk to aren't paying that. So why do they think who do they think they're representing on that? McDonald's, on the other hand, you know, they're paying what, $8, $8.10 an hour, and advising people on their website where to go get public assistance, where to go get food stamps, where to go get public housing. And so other small businesses have an unequal playing field, and taxpayers are picking up the cost of their employees.
Well, the taxpayers are subsidizing what some of these industries, you know, won't do. I just read recently an article in Ms. Magazine where there's a worker in Walmart. She has to collect food stamps because there just doesn't make the, you know, she barely makes the minimum wage, and she can't take care of her family. You know, if we don't create demand, there is, you know, it's what we talked about before. If people don't have the wherewithal to go out and to purchase something, you know, then the economy suffers. So businesses are there.
So the American Association of University Women did a study last year. My district is 21% less that women take home.
Wow.
Than the comparable said, 21%. So it's insane. But your Center for American Progress just participated with a larger group, or you did on their behalf, that did a study that deals with a lot of these issues.
Yes, so I would just say on CAP is actually doing work on this issue of the minimum wage and on government benefits, and we're finding that people basically when we don't raise the minimum wage, we're actually just shifting those costs. Those people who are receiving less than 1010 are using billions of dollars of food stamp, SNAP program, other programs. And so it's really a way for some employers to shift the cost. So what we're saying is, you know, you increase demand, that money is spent in the community. That also helps create jobs in the long run. And it also is just it's a moral issue. If you work 40 hours a week, you really shouldn't have to live in poverty. So I think that's the argument that, you know, the
conservative argument on that is basically what you say is this is not something the taxpayers are going to lose from, they're going to gain.
Right.
And so they're not subsidizing.
You get into, this is not about people who are making more money, who are rich, or there's this kind of what will arise here, this notion of class warfare. It's not that. People, as Neera pointed out, if you are working 40 hours a week, you want to be able to take care of your families, and people agree with that. And what women are looking at, what we have found, is that they want pay equity. They want to raise the minimum wage. They want education and training opportunities.
Absolutely.
They need
the
child
polls show
care.
guys do too.
Yeah,
So that's interesting.
No, this spills
it shows
over.
an incredible bipartisanship.
That's right.
Unfortunately, not here in the House, where Republicans seem to be dead set against it. But the polls show that guys are for it, and Republicans, Independents, and Democrats are hugely in favor of this.
This is about a better quality of life.
Of course, it's about people.
For themselves and their families. And this is not mutually exclusive with women. This resonates.
And most people want their neighbors to do well.
Right.
That's
I
right.
mean, they don't want to have their neighbors doing poorly on that. So
that's right.
But I do think one thing to point out, though, is that, you know, these issues, you're both right, these issues are 80% support, 85% support in the public. And they're, you know, you have Republican support, independent support, strong majorities of independents and Democrats, and a lot of Republicans, sometimes majority support. But it is the case that we are having a difficult time moving these issues in the House because people may not want to explain this to their voters, but they are against these issues, and their leadership is stopping these issues.
It's ideology on that.
It's you know, they basically see this as a, you know, a problem for their campaign. So it is, you know, people think it's such common sense, they forget that it's being stopped in the House of Representatives. And so that's why, I mean, the Senate has I think the Senate was likely to pass the minimum wage bill. It's passed a number of bills in the past that have just stopped at the House door. And
well, I
know you guys are
people
fighting
that, you know, we don't dislike our colleagues, and they, I hope, don't dislike us, but there's two different worldviews going on.
Right.
There's a segment of the Republican caucus that doesn't think that government has any role, and they get their back up and think it's an infringement on their personal liberties. But this is sort of an unusual way to look at it, because this is just the opposite. This is basically saying businesses, we don't want the government and taxpayers to have to pick up the tab for your employee costs. We just want you to pay them fairly.
Right, and when you make
step forward and do it.
When you make arguments about the government intervening too much, here's an opportunity to have the government do less and just have people be able to make money at their companies.
We did pass paycheck fairness, as you will recall, because it came through committee that
Right, the
when
Education
we were in
Committee.
the majority in the Education and
Lilly
Workforce
Ledbetter
Committee.
Act.
We passed Lilly Ledbetter. Well, we
Passed
passed
pay equity
Paycheck
after
Fairness
that.
twice
Yep.
on the floor of the House, and you know,
Didn't get through the Senate.
under the you know, the Speaker Pelosi, but it lost in the Senate twice. The first time by 2 votes.
Right.
And this last time it was filibustered. So you're right. People don't want to go back and say that they're opposed to these efforts. And the fact is that we talk about a women's economic agenda and their families because at the center of it is about what the struggle has been.
Right.
For women and their families, but there's also a lack of recognition sometimes on the part of others that these are important issues.
Right.
That they are
Absolutely.
front burner
That they're
issues.
front burner issues.
And that they're a clear part of what our economy and the growth of our economy needs to be about.
I think back that John F. Kennedy signed the Equal Pay Act in 50 years ago.
Yeah,
Right,
right,
it was a long
50
time
years ago.
It's crazy.
50 years
So
ago.
look,
Same
we have
issue.
that whole issue,
Right.
but then you also have the issue of balance, of work-family balance.
Right.
So many. I mean, I look at Jessica in our family, who's in her last semester of nursing school. She has a 2-year-old son. John, her husband, is is a carpenter, so he's got work. Then he doesn't have work. Then he has work. So how do you take care of the 2-year-old? Where do you place him? When one's in school and one's working, they're both trying to improve themselves. That balance is as much of the picture as anything else.
Absolutely. And we did this report called Women Pushing Back for the Brink, which really focuses on the issues that you're talking about, the issues around flexibility, so paid leave, and the fact that the United States is one of a handful of countries in the world, countries that really shouldn't be competing on any comparison with, like Papua New Guinea, that doesn't offer paid
Sierra
leave.
Leone, Papua New Guinea, and
Right.
one or two
It's
others.
really-
I mean, it's kind of
Nothing
pathetic. I'm willing to
industrial.
say.
Well, the pushback on that always is that they go right to the small business person and say, like, oh, this is going to devastate your business if you only have a couple of employees and one of them goes on paid leave.
Right.
And the whole issue, and sort of ignore the fact of how many companies out there have hundreds of people working for them, and it's not the situation at all.
Right, and actually, the truth is, those companies, Rosa's been a tremendous leader on this issue and has introduced really important legislation on this. And it really is the case that you don't have to put the cost entirely on the employer. You can really share. We all sort of share in the burden, so no employer really takes a big hit on that. In terms of time, of course they do. But what's happening now is women leave the workforce entirely because they don't see a path forward for them. So that doesn't help in terms
Because the
of
cost of training a new person almost half of what you were paying them anyway, right?
right. So that's a big problem. And also one of the big challenges we have, there's a lot of concerns about leadership. One of the reasons why we have a lag in women's leadership in companies in the public and private sector is because women, go through those childbearing years and then have the costs entirely borne by them. We don't provide a lot of help with childcare. We don't help that much with paid leave or any of these other services. So they bear those costs just go to that family. And so they have to struggle to deal with it. And then they come back out into the workforce years later instead of being attached to the workforce through paid leave or other mechanisms.
The notion, Rosa, that some people don't get a single paid day off during the year if they have a
Sad.
parent that's sick, needs help, or a child, or themselves, or their spouse, they don't get a day off unless they lose a day's pay. I see people struggling with that all the time. And then, they go daycare center workers. I see, I talk to a lot. They're going to work sick and getting other people sick because they can't afford to stay home, because they'll lose a day's pay and they've got a family to take care of, or their child is sick. It just gets absurd. But that you even would propose, as we have, that you get at least 6 days a year where, you can take off and paid like that, and people resist that. Usually the people that are resisting it get the sick time that they need.
Right. No, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Still culturally in our society, with all that we've talked about of women being in the workforce and the pay issues, women are still the primary caregivers.
Right.
They have all of the household responsibilities. I'm not suggesting that men are not sharing in some of that today, but they're still overall. They have the main responsibility. And given that, we are a society that doesn't provide these kinds of services to them to be able to do both work and family. You talk about paid sick days. I'm very proud of Connecticut. Connecticut has led the
Absolutely.
country
Great.
with legislation to do that. And a poignant story from the event that I had about when women succeed, America succeeds, is a bus driver whose name was Ivy. She talked about two pieces of the agenda. One was that she was able to take care of a sick father because Connecticut has a sick day policy. The second, though, she said that she saw so many parents when she was picking up their children crying because the child may have been sick and they had to put the child on the bus to go to school because she couldn't take a day off or he couldn't take a day off. This affects men and women. They can't take the time off. So you are, it's a great imposition. Most restaurant workers today don't have sick time. I mean, they're in the business where they're dealing with people, and you have a cold, you know that you may give it to someone else, but if you go to work sick, you're in trouble. Now, family medical leave. Family medical leave, the now unpaid 12 weeks. Right. Over 100 million people have used that to take time for family.
A lot of it unpaid, as you say.
It's unpaid.
Strain, even though it's a strain, financially like that, it's important for them to be there during that period of time.
That's
and they take that option.
And so we've introduced the legislation, the Family Act. Senator Gillibrand in the Senate, myself here, the Family Act that would allow for employer-employee to cooperate financially in order to provide paid family leave. And we work closely with the center on these issues, which just make enormous economic sense.
The strange part is that people in this country almost deride other countries for the fact that they do these types of things. Other countries look at us like we're crazy that we don't.
Right.
It's sort of
and
strange.
the odd thing, though, what I find so interesting about the discourse, especially in Washington, is that you have so many people, particularly on the other side of the aisle, who talk about family values and talk about how important it is to have policies that support, to do things that support families and hold up the family is the most important thing. But here are basic steps that you could deal with.
I think it gets back to the notion that they don't want government to be involved at all.
Right.
And so they think that everybody, they seem to discount that life has any vicissitudes or that anybody ever gets bumped with a problem in life and everybody's going to take care of their own problem.
Right.
And maybe that's the way that they individually think they can handle it. But more often than not, as soon as they get a problem, I won't name names, but I know a member here in this Congress that used to drive the thing until a grandchild of his got very sick with autism, and all of a sudden it was a cause that was being championed. So it happens to people, and if you're lucky enough it hasn't happened to you yet, you hopefully would have the empathy to understand it happens to a huge proportion of our society.
Right. Neera knows this story. She's heard me tell it before, but I worked for Senator Dodd, and 1986, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and
you were.
I was, and I had to tell the senator we were getting ready to launch his second run for the Senate, and I was chief of staff. I was about to take a leave of absence to do the campaign, and I went to him and I said, they're going to put me in the hospital at the end of the week, and quite frankly, I didn't know whether I was coming back or not. And you never forget these moments when he just looked at me and he said, Rosa, go get yourself well. Your job is here. Whether it is as chief of staff or whether it is the campaign, the job, it will not start without you. Now, I had the luxury of that. That is not the case for most people in this country. And we have to understand people don't decide to get ill. Or their family don't decide to get ill. And we have to and acknowledge that we have a different workforce today.
Right.
No one is at home full time. Everyone is in the workforce.
And the good news is that women get these issues, right? And so that's why there is so much strong public support. And the challenge we have is that we have to translate that strong public support into action.
Right.
And
to make sure that people understand this is not a takeaway.
Yeah,
it's an add-on. It's not diminishing
absolutely.
things. It's not making things lesser. It's not trying to put you out of business or anything of that nature. It's an add-on if it's done right.
Right,
and
absolutely.
it's a cooperative nature
That's
of
right.
what you
We
do.
can
Work
this
together
out.
on that on that basis.
I mean, California's had paid leave.
That's right.
And
So does Rhode Island.
And so does Rhode Island.
And
Rhode
New
Island.
Jersey.
The
And
world
New
didn't
Jersey.
stop.
Their economies are doing fine. They're doing better in many respects.
Well, like 2/3 of the women in this country have preschool kids. And a lot of them are working.
That's the other area.
And heading off. So we only have a couple minutes left, but we have the pre-K bill that Rosa and I both co-sponsor on that. Of every expert witness comes in front of the Education Committee, testifies about the importance of pre-K.
preschool.
In fact, we had 19 witnesses one time, ranging from everything from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to the Center for American Progress, to superintendents and teachers, and to a person. When I asked them what's the most important thing you could do for education, it was preschool.
Right.
And when I asked them how you're going to pay for it, I got 18 blanks. And Roy Barnes, who was the former governor of Georgia, said, well, you take away the senior year of high school and transfer it in. And he said, it'll never happen, though, because of football. But the idea is, where we put the investment, like on that, all of the return is to do that. And the importance of having quality daycare. So people go to work and you come from that. Affordable daycare. But I have, communities in my district that don't have full day kindergarten yet.
Wow.
And some that do, but they charge $5,000 a year for a parent to send their child there. So we've got some work to do there.
Well, you look at it up close on the Education Committee, and you've been such a champion in this area, and you know that the attempts that there have been, to cut back education at every level, whether it is preschool or, or high school or, going to college. But it's critical at that preschool level, and yet we face serious obstacles to trying to make that investment.
Well, we have so many people in the private sector these days that have done successfully in business, gone very successful in business, who want to do something in the education realm, and they try to come in and prescribe, what educators ought to do, even though they've never been an educator a day in their life. This pre-K area is a great area for them to come in with their resources and say, if we can partner up those people and states and the federal government or whatever, because it's going to be expensive, but you've got to share that expense, and the private and the public, and it's a great place for those people to get involved where it will really make a difference and really matter.
Absolutely. And this is an area, actually, that there has been a lot of bipartisan support just outside of Washington. So Republican governors have been leading on these issues. Democratic governors have pushed it to the fore, but you have Republican governors, states that are pretty conservative, like Oklahoma Georgia, have universal pre-K programs. And what's great about pre-K is it's great for families, right? Because parents are so stressed out dealing with the costs. But it's also really important from a long-term competitiveness perspective. So kids come to school ready to learn. In Oklahoma, they've had statewide exams. They do testing, and they show that kids who are in pre-K do much better reading on grade and doing their math in third grade than other students. So it has that benefit there, but also we know that we get long-term benefits, that it helps make kids ready, and it's one of the best things we can do for our long-term competitiveness. So that's why I think the Chamber of Commerce kept it a joint event with the Chamber of Commerce on it. They support it. A lot of businesses do. Republican governors do. We really just need
get them to talk to their members in the House.
Yes,
that's what
absolutely.
And do it on that, because the models are
has
there.
to happen.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
And do that. And so where we in the majority, we would bring those people in to testify and to see it.
And this is part of this agenda. It's pay that we've talked about, the work-family balance, and the other is child care, to make it affordable and make it accessible and to deal with pre-K.
That's a perfect wrap-up. We could go on for a while. I mean, this is serious stuff, and when we had the forum in your district and mine, people really got engaged on it because it's important stuff. And Neera, the work that you're doing is fantastic. I want to thank you for doing all that you are doing, Rosa, for being a great colleague and a friend, as well as a great member. When women succeed, America succeeds. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John.